When you give yourself over to sexual sin or perversion, there really is a deeper spiritual reality behind that. Whether that be lust, adultery, or fornication, there is something more sinister happening behind the scenes that many people don't see. If you struggle with sexual sin on any level and you desire freedom and the strength to resist temptation, I truly believe that this mini-series is going to help you in your battle. We're going to expose sexual sin for what it really is, and we're going to use the scriptures to do that. In this third episode, we're going to break down King Solomon's tragic fall, why exactly foreign women are involved, and then we'll look at Jezebel, easily the most wicked woman in biblical history. Let's dive into the Bible. 1 Kings chapter 3 verse 1 says, Solomon made a marriage alliance with Pharaoh, king of Egypt. He took Pharaoh's daughter and brought her into the city of David until he had finished building his own house and the house of the Lord and the wall around Jerusalem. I hope that this series serves as a guide for you in your battle against sin. I hope that this helps you gain more victory over sexual sin and perversion in your life. And I'm going to do my best to walk you through what the Lord has showed me over the course of my walk. And in this third episode, if you didn't already know, this is a mini-series. I highly recommend you go watch the first 2 episodes before jumping into this. That will set the tone for these other episodes. There's some foundational ideas in those first 2 episodes that will be helpful for this one. But in this episode, we're going to expose the spiritual reality behind the story of Solomon, and then we're going to look at the story of Jezebel and Ahab. And I believe you're going to find tremendous wisdom in these 2 stories, because remember, if you've already watched the first 2 episodes, what we're looking for in each of these examples are these 3 main components that often are associated with one another. There's sexual immorality or perversion. Number 2, there's occult practices. And number 3, there's idolatry. So these are the 3 components we're looking for. Very often, sexual sin is either a gateway into blatant idolatry or it's a form of idolatry in and of itself. But for now, most people fly right by this little verse opening, Solomon's reign. He married Pharaoh's daughter, and we're like, yeah, so what? So what is not the right response. He ends up taking Pharaoh's daughter right here, his own house where he was to dwell, and the court was like workmanship, was of like workmanship. Solomon made a house for Pharaoh's daughter whom he had taken in marriage. So that's not the only direct reference to specifically Pharaoh's daughter, who is one of Solomon's wives. Remember, Solomon had, 300 wives and X number of concubines. That's way too many, way too many wives. So, for some reason, the story of Solomon wants to periodically highlight Pharaoh's daughter, and I'm just giving attention to that for a minute. Pharaoh's daughter in chapter 9 went up from the city of David to her own house, Solomon built just for her. Now, this is a marriage alliance. This is to unite nations. This is to be in agreement. This is to, I guess, maritally sign a treaty of sorts where we're at peace. And so this was a political move and a national move for his kingdom for sure. But this was one of the first and worst decisions Solomon could have made. This is what the text also says about Solomon. In chapter 11, I just want you to notice, it started in chapter 3, chapter 7, chapter 9, talking about Solomon, specifically one wife, Pharaoh's daughter. And then look at how it's, over the course of his reign, how that has just grown out of control. Now, King Solomon loved many foreign women, okay? Now, if you don't know, God specifically told Israel and their kings, do not intermarry with the surrounding nations. That is a no-no. We're not going to do that. So that's a direct commandment that Solomon has already violated. Along with, once again, the daughter of Pharaoh. I just want us to be thinking, why 4 times in Solomon's story is there one woman that is singled out? The daughter of Pharaoh. Could she be what caused the downfall of his kingdom and set that into motion? Could she be the first domino that brought everything toppling down, which is this decision to intermarry with the nations? And it started off innocent, not a big deal, even though it's a direct violation of God's commandment, so it's not innocent. But it started off like seemingly not a big deal, insignificant. Then it turns into this. Moabite women, Ammonite, Edomite, Sidonian, Hittite women. If you don't know the Old Testament, these names mean nothing to you. But if you understand the Old Testament, with each name, you're going, no, no, no. From the nations concerning which the Lord had said to the people, like specifically these nations, you shall not enter into marriage with them, neither shall they with you. Surely they will turn away your heart after their gods. How did God know that? Why was that a certain thing? Why was that absolutely going to happen? Because God knows the nature of the human heart. He knows the tendencies of our flesh. He knows the trajectory of the human heart if given just a little bit of sin, just a little bit of compromise, where it ends up, where the life goes. And isn't that the story of many of our lives, where just small compromises, maybe not directly sin, maybe not a direct violation of God's commands, but compromises nonetheless that lead to great sins and behaviors and thought patterns that are just so worldly. We're like, how did we get here? Just like Solomon, it starts with the small compromise. I mean, even when you look at David, his father, on the house, he should be at war during the springtime when kings go to war, and he's not. He's standing on the house, standing on the roof, looking around, sees Bathsheba. That decision to pursue what he saw is what set into motion the downfall of his reign. Same with Solomon. Solomon is going to follow in the footsteps of his father David. But I want us just to imagine the empire, the kingdom of Israel. Like, this is the golden age of Israel. They are on top. They have abundance. They are flourishing. They are successful. They are the most powerful national entity and kingdom. I mean, nations and kings are coming to Solomon. He's so wealthy, he makes shields of gold, right? So this is the golden era of Israel. So if I were the enemy, not just the enemy nations, but the spiritual enemy behind these things, if I were the devil, how would I initiate the downfall of such an established, flourishing kingdom? Apparently, it involves this one decision that Solomon made to marry the daughter of Pharaoh. And I'm convinced that's what led to all these other downfalls and compromises. Solomon clung to these in love. He had, 700 wives. Remember how I said 300? He had 300 concubines who were princesses. A question I have is, are all of them royalty before he married them? Are these all marriage alliance kind of political moves? Or are they just all princesses because they're married to Solomon specifically? It's a lot of wedding ceremonies, by the way. His wives did what? Just like God said, turned away his heart. Why would anyone abandon the God who gave Solomon all the wisdom he could ever want, all the wealth and power and influence and status and the name that he could never even imagine for himself? How could he ever do something that, from our perspective, seems absolutely irrational and out of the question, absurd? It started with these small compromises, and slowly, because his heart was attached to women that worshiped other gods, his heart followed them. Jesus will comment on the heart and the trajectory of the life later on in the Sermon on the Mount, but for now, know that we're seeing what Jesus talks about right here in Solomon. When Solomon was old, his wives turned away his heart. Repeatedly, his heart, his loyalty to God, was negatively influenced by the wives he had married from the pagan nations, because they turned his heart after other gods. His heart was not wholly true to the Lord, as was the heart of his father David. Solomon, this is so tragic. Like, he was so set up, so successful, so blessed, had God on his side, the favor and grace, the wisdom of God, the Spirit of God. And now he's like, how do you make such numbskull decisions? Again, sin makes you do dumb things. The sensual passions of the flesh, sexual desire, makes you do the most irrational things. He worshipped Ashtoreth, Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. Solomon did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not wholly follow the Lord as David, his father, had done. Then Solomon builds a high place, makes provision for idolatry. encourages idolatry, sets up places for idolatry, for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, for Molech, the abomination of the Ammonites, which, by the way, was the main pagan deity that demanded the children to be sacrificed. And this mountain is east of Jerusalem. So he did for all his foreign wives who made offerings and sacrificed to their gods. Do you notice the progression of things? I like women. I'll compromise and violate God's commands to go after those women, and I have more women than I should. More access is not always good, by the way. And then from there, that leads into they worship false gods, and in order to, appease my wives or show my love for my wives because I'm attached to them, I'm going to begin to dabble in that stuff. And then it turns into, I'm going to make provision for this so the rest of the nation can enjoy. I'm going to make a competing mountain temple with Yahweh for these other gods. And I'm going to sacrifice to them too. And slowly, do you see how sexual perversion and sin and sex appeal can very subtly turn your heart? And after enough time, you're so far from God, you wonder how in the world did I ever make these decisions? How did I ever think that this was even a good decision to make? Nehemiah is going to comment on Solomon. In those days I saw the Jews who had married women of Ashdod, Ammon, and Moab. Again, they're repeating the sins of their fathers. Half their children spoke the language of Ashdod, and they couldn't even speak the language of Judah, and I confronted them. I made them take an oath. I said, you shall not give your daughters to their sons, or your sons to their daughters. Didn't Solomon do this? Now, this is the reference point for why this is a stupid decision. Remember Solomon? Do you remember what he did on account of such women? The sin that tore his kingdom apart? That is what makes his kingdom crumble. Among the many nations, there was no king like him. He was beloved by his God. God made him king over Israel. Nevertheless, as set up and as secure and as successful as Solomon was, foreign women, sexual pleasure, and sin caused him to really, really violate the covenant, idolatry. Why is sexual sin such a gateway into, why is it used as a gateway into idolatry? Shall we listen to you and do all this great evil and act treacherously against our God? This is treachery. It is treason. That's how we should view idolatry. It is treason against the king. It's a violation of the covenant for Israel. How did they get to that point? Foreign women. How did Solomon? Foreign women. How will King Ahab over the northern kingdom of Israel? Foreign women. That's what we're going to explore now. We're going to jump to Ahab and Jezebel. Hey, if you don't know me, my name is Jason, and you can find everything about this ministry on abovereproachministry.com. All of our Bible resources, our online church, ways to support this ministry, and so much more. And if you live anywhere near Spartanburg, South Carolina, come check out our church on Sundays at 10 a.m. Also, I have 2 brief updates for those of you that are part of this community. Number 1, the revision of my book Fruitful is coming out soon, hopefully in the next few weeks. So be sure to grab a copy of that when it does release. And number 2, we now have options on our website for monthly support. And when you become part of our monthly support team, you get access to all of our exclusive teachings and videos that get released every week. This is just my way of saying thank you. All right, that's all I got for you. Let's get back to the video. Jezebel is easily the most wicked human being, if not at least the most wicked woman in biblical history. In fact, she's so wicked, she gets referenced in Revelation as we talked about this in episode 1, as you do not want that spirit to be tolerated. You do not want that kind of a woman to be tolerated. 1 Kings 16:31. As if it had been a light thing for King Ahab to walk in the sins of Jeroboam, he took for his wife Jezebel, the daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Sidonians. This seems like another marriage alliance move. Seems like another political move on the part of Ahab to unite his northern kingdom with the Sidonians. How? Through marriage. How do the gods of, the demons, you might say, and principalities behind the Sidonians, how do they entice Israel into idolatry and in violation of covenant with Yahweh? Well, through small decisions like this. And he went and served. That took no time. He served Baal and worshipped him. In fact, just like Solomon, he erected an altar. He made provision for Baal in the house of Baal, which he built in Samaria. He built him his own house. Like Solomon built the temple of Yahweh, Ahab, at the instruction of Jezebel, built a house for Baal. And Ahab made an Asherah. Like, things are just snowballing, out of control. Ahab did more to provoke God to anger. Do you notice the similarities between these stories? Israel provoked God to anger. How? Through idolatry. How they get there? Sexual perversion and the occult. How did Solomon and his foreign wives? Same thing. That nation. How does Ahab provoke God? Same exact thing. I'm not saying this is the only strategy of the enemy, but it seems to be one of the main ones. One of the main ones. In fact, if you go to 1 Kings 18:4, I just want to make some brief comments about Jezebel. When Jezebel cut off the prophets of the Lord, this is a wicked woman, guys, who uses sex appeal, uses her sensuality, plays on the sensual passions of men, takes advantage of them, and throws in the occult, sorcery, witchcraft, killing, murder, bloodshed. Obadiah took 100 prophets and hid them. So Jezebel is going to end up telling Elijah, I'm going to kill you too, after that big showdown on Carmel. There was none who sold himself to do what was evil in the sight of the Lord like Ahab. Well, how was he incited to do such evil? Jezebel, his wife, incited him. He acted very abominably in going after idols, as the Amorites had done, which, by the way, the Lord cast out the Ammonites precisely for that reason. And what did God tell Israel? Do not engage in the practices of the nations that I've removed, or you yourselves will find yourselves exiled. 2 Kings 9:22, when Joram saw Jehu is essentially sent by God to deal with the house of Ahab once and for all, and Jezebel, bring her terror to an end. Joram answers Jehu, Jehu answers Joram, what peace can there be as long as the whorings, the sorceries of your mother Jezebel are so many? Sorceries, huh? Look at verse 30. When Jehu came to Jezreel, Jezebel heard. And notice what she uses or does to try and get out of this situation. Same thing she used on Ahab, sex appeal, sensuality, pleasure. And she painted her eyes. She adorned her head. Why would you go through all that trouble to look out the window and be like, yo, Jehu, you here to kill me? There's something about this woman that is magnetic, enticing, enchanting, all the words we used in video number 1. Jezebel is known for her sorceries, her whorings. In fact, if we do a quick search, real quick search, you'll see in Revelation 2:20, this is what Jesus says to the church in Thyatira. He says, I have this against you. You tolerate that woman Jezebel, the spirit of Jezebel. There's another prophetess in that generation functioning as a Jezebel, and she's teaching and seducing. That's what Jezebel's known for, seduction. Seducing my servants, not just to practice sexual immorality, but to eat food sacrificed to idols. I gave her time to repent, but she refuses. So idolatry and sexual immorality, sensuality, seduction, all tied together, man. All tied together. So when you give yourself over to sexual sin, like imagine it's Jezebel opening the door to the occult and darkness and idolatry. Would you really say yes to that? That's essentially what we say yes to in some form when we do give ourselves over to sexual sin. In the 12th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, king of Israel, Ahaziah began to reign. Ahaziah was 22 when he began to reign, and he reigned in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Athaliah. Now, she's another wicked individual, messed up. She's going to have a grandson named Jehoash, and she's going to kill all of her descendants besides Joash, because he's hidden, because she wants to hold on to the throne. She was a granddaughter of Omri, king of Israel, which is another way of saying she was the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel, because Omri was the king of Ahab, and Ahab and Jezebel had Athaliah. He also walked in the way of Ahab and did what was evil. You notice Ahaziah married Ahab's daughter, essentially, is what's happening. Or Ahaziah, king of Judah, is the son-in-law of Ahab. Right, son-in-law of Ahab. Let me back this up. In the 12th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, king of Israel, Ahaziah began to reign. Ahaziah was 22 when he began to reign. He reigned in Jerusalem, his mother's name. So now we got that house of Ahab leaking over to Judah and Jerusalem, slowly corrupting them. I forget the whole how he fits into the family tree, not for today. But here's the last thing we're going to look at. We're almost done. 2 Kings 8:16 through 18. In the 5th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, when Jehoshaphat was king of Judah, Jehoram, I know keeping track of all these names, it's not the point. He was 32 when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem. He walked in the way of the kings of Israel, as the house of Ahab had done, for the daughter of Ahab was his wife. So what's the connection between Jehoram, or Joram is another way to say his name, and Ahab? Well, Jehoram here, the son of Jehoshaphat, he reigned in Jerusalem, and he walked in the ways of the kings of Israel. Remember, you have two kingdoms. Northern kingdom, Israel. Southern kingdom, Judah. Well, Judah's kind of in its own pocket. The wicked ways of Israel in the north are starting to come down to Judah through the family of Ahab. And the way that Ahab influences, or his family influences, Judah is by Jehoram being given into marriage to Ahab's daughter. And that's when, once again, we see this pattern of doing evil in the sight of the Lord, idolatry, pagan practices. But the reason I bring in the occult in regards to Jezebel and Ahab is because Jezebel is actually known for her witchcraft and sorcery, along with her whorings, along with her wickedness and bloodshed and killing of God's people and leading people into idolatry. And then Solomon and his foreign wives. I would like to suggest that in the golden age of Israel, the way that the enemy comes in through the back door to start pulling things out and messing with the kingdom is by installing Pharaoh's daughter as the queen alongside Solomon. That she's referenced the most. There's no other wife of Solomon that is called out, like singled out. And 4 times in his story, Pharaoh's daughter. I think Pharaoh's daughter, this is just me speculating, but when the text says that he's marrying strange women or a forbidden woman like we see in Proverbs, I am inclined to think that Pharaoh's daughter in some way is like Jezebel, at least in the way she's being used to lead the king and the nation that follows him astray into idolatry. And occult practices are typically involved. If I'm not mistaken, there are Second Temple writings usually attributed to Solomon. If I am not mistaken, the term is pseudepigraphal, meaning it's a sign to Solomon, but it's not really Solomon writing, or maybe it was. I don't really know. But there are other writings that have more of these occult dimensions and practices to them. I'm not saying read them. I'm not saying not. I'm just stating a fact. That Solomon seems to have been influenced in that way. Whether those writings are legit and can be attributed to him or not, that's at least the cultural understanding of Solomon's downfall, is it involved pagan practices that probably originated in Egypt and the other nations that were brought over. So notice that the way the enemy corrupts is he brings foreign darkness and paganism into the lives of communities and families and households through these mediums of sexual perversion, sexual enticement, sensuality, seduction, whatever you want to call it. It's playing on the sexual desires of our flesh. And so just be thinking about that, like, man, the spirit of Jezebel, why was that a thing in Revelation? Not to say like, possibly, I've heard people say there is an actual demonic spirit known as Jezebel. Either way, I don't care. The fact of the matter is that she is so, she has such a reputation that other women or people that have that similar way of thinking, they're associated with Jezebel. They almost become stand-ins for Jezebel. So in the next video, we're going to look at the demonic agenda behind sexual sin, and we're going to see how Delilah is going to be used in the same way we've seen Jezebel. Not to say that Jezebel's innocent. She's not innocent. Not to say that Solomon's wife, Pharaoh's daughter, is innocent. Probably not. Delilah is most definitely not innocent in the way she's enticing Samson. But when you see this story on repeat, pay attention. Apparently, the human condition can be narrowed down to a set of patterns, and this is one of the patterns. So in the next video, we'll look at the golden calf as well as Delilah and Samson. And again, I'm going to caution you: don't jump into the next video. Spend some time reflecting on this. Read the scriptures on your own. Spend time in prayer. Jot down some notes. Self-reflect a bit and say, where in my life have I possibly given myself over to things that I really didn't think? I took the bait. I took the sexual sin bait, the perversion, and I was given over to something I did not sign up for. Where do I see that? Where do I see the occult or witchcraft or sorcery in my life associated with sexual perversion or idolatry? Because again, sexual sin is a means to an end. It's a tool in the hands of the enemy. And so if we can expose it for what it really is, you're going to begin viewing sexual sin from God's perspective, and you're going to see it as the least appetizing thing you could ever look at. And you will not be drawn to it as much. It will lose its luster. So I'll see you in video number 4 when we look at the golden calf and Delilah. Hey, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more biblical content just like this. We have hundreds of videos, but you might be most interested in these ones right here. Also, visit our website for all of our free resources and classes. And thank you so much for partnering with us financially to make this ministry even possible. Keep moving towards Jesus, and I'll see you in the next video.